Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. Beneath the crust of humanity's sacred heart, there are places no light has touched since the birth of the Imperium. Stone deeper than any vault, more ancient than even the Emperor's rise. In these blackened corridors, some say the stars themselves left their mark long before man ever walked Terra. It is in this shadow, in this whisper of cosmic dread, that the Black Templars allegedly found something they were never meant to see. Something not dead, not dreaming, but waiting. The tale isn't written in official histories. It lingers in overheard prayers, in redacted reports, in the haunted eyes of veterans who will never speak again. But among the more superstitious ranks of the Black Templars, passed like forbidden scripture, is a belief that beneath Terra lies not only the cradle of mankind, but the coffin of a god. Terra is sanctified beyond imagination, a planet layered in cathedrals of faith, seas of devotion, and oceans of concrete. Yet beneath its radiant monuments and fortress hives lies a hidden world that defies comprehension. Not merely tunnels, nor even the vast transit arteries carved by ancient machines, but true catacombs, untouched by human presence for millennia. Entire subterranean continents carved from forgotten ages. Vaults locked with seals whose origins are debated even among the oldest tech priests. Structures so vast and so ancient, they seem not merely pre-imperial, but perhaps pre-human. The surface of Terra is a battlefield of bureaucracy, with the High Lords jockeying for influence and sacred parades weaving across ground soaked in blood and incense. But far below all that splendor, beneath even the black stone layers shielding the golden throne, there are spaces where the air turns thick and cold, where torchlight seems devoured by the stone, where gravity subtly warps and the whispers of the warp grow louder. The administratum might record every breath drawn on Terra's surface, but even it admits gaps, blank spaces in its maps, places where data disappears or entire excavation teams have been erased. It is said that when the Mechanicus attempted a grand recataloguing of Terra's crust during the 38th millennium, more than half of their deep scan probes returned incoherent or contradictory readings. Some never returned at all. Others brought back images that defied physical law, cubic hollows buried beneath kilometer-thick stone, cyclopean structures made of unknown alloys, and glyphs that no known human, xenos, or machine tongue could decode. The findings were buried, the tech priests silenced or reassigned, and the effort quietly abandoned under the guise of reallocation of resources. But whispers escaped into the darkness, carried by servitors with broken logic cores and data ghosts screaming on Vox channels. There are tombs below Terra, not the graves of saints or primarchs, but ancient constructs sealed by more than just steel and stone. Some say the Ordo Redactus was founded to protect knowledge not merely forbidden, but cosmically damning. Its agents walk silently among the Inquisition, never speaking, never revealing their charge. One such charge, it is rumored, is a cavern so vast it is said to have its own weather. Storms of static, winds made of data, and a ceiling that shifts like a starfield. The legend tells of doors made not to be opened, but to keep something imprisoned. Doors that bleed warmth, like the last breath of dying suns. Even the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's personal guardians, are known to deploy beneath the surface. Not to patrol, but to seal, to erase what should never have been uncovered. Their golden armor dims with black ash when they return. They speak not of their battles, and their silence weighs heavier than any confession. Some among the Silent Sisterhood believe these actions are not merely containment, but appeasement. As if something sleeps, and their presence, their rituals, are to ensure it continues to do so. Terran mythologies, long since absorbed or burned by the ecclesiarchy, spoke of the hearts of stars buried in the land, stone wombs cradling fire, and gods cast into the pit by lightwalkers. These stories were once dismissed as mere folklore, early mankind grappling with volcanic phenomena or tectonic instability. But those same phrases, nearly identical in structure, have allegedly been found inscribed in stasis vaults untouched since the dark age of technology. What if they were never myth? What if they were memory? It is easy to see Terra as a shining beacon. It is much harder to accept that this same world, so saturated in divine light, might be constructed atop a foundation of pre-human horror. The deepest catacombs may not have been dug by man at all. Their angles are wrong, their echoes do not behave as they should, The Black Templars, driven by righteous fury and ancient instincts, were not the first to descend into the depths. But perhaps they were the first in 10,000 years to descend far enough and survive long enough to bring back the truth, however briefly, before silence claimed them. Terra's surface may belong to the Emperor, but its roots, its veins, its bones, those might belong to something far older. Something that remembers the stars before they burned and watches, still, from beneath the world humanity calls home. The Black Templars are no strangers to holy pilgrimage. Their lives are a testament to unceasing crusade, and they seek the presence of the Emperor not just on battlefields, but within the sacred stones of Terra itself. Yet one such pilgrimage, marked in the most cryptic margins of chapter memory, and denied by the High Lords with particular vehemence, stands out as something entirely different. An event that should have been a celebration of fealty turned instead into a whispered schism, an unauthorized descent into darkness that may have triggered one of the most heavily redacted inquisitorial actions in the last 5 millennia. The records state that a Templar fleet arrived in orbit under the command of Marshal Ethan Varick. Ostensibly, their purpose was ceremonial, a tribute to the martyrdom of Sigismund and a reaffirmation of oaths before the throne. This alone was not unprecedented, though the Templars rarely sought Terra's soil without grave cause. But something was different. Their approach was unannounced, their rituals unorthodox, and most damning of all, their subsequent actions broke every protocol of planetary sanctity. A detachment of the Templars, accompanied by no known ecclesiarchical officials and eschewing contact with the custodes, penetrated the lower zones of the Terran crust using a set of coordinates acquired through unknown means. They bypassed restricted zones known only to a few among the Officio Assassinorum and passed through Mechanicus shielded sanctums, long considered impassable. The way was not forced with blade or fire, but rather as if some unseen door had opened willingly at their approach. These were not warriors lost, but men guided. Some say Marshal Varick had received a vision, a burning sword descending into a sunken tomb, a choir of machine voices screaming in binary litany. Others whisper of an artifact uncovered during a prior crusade, a shard of alien alloy that resonated with Terran soil, humming louder as it neared orbit. Whatever the catalyst, the detachment descended into depths no Templar was ever meant to tread, and for 3 Terran days, all Vox contact ceased. In that time, the entire region of sublevel 63 Kappa was declared quarantined by the Inquisition under emergency protocols so severe that even Imperial Navy vessels in high orbit were warned to reroute power away from certain frequency bands. When contact resumed, the survivors were fewer than expected. Their armor bore symbols not found in any standard Templar codex: fractured suns, stylized black stars, and an eye formed from broken circuit paths. Their chaplains spoke in fragmented High Gothic, their scripture tainted with phrases no cleric recognized. These men were not declared heretics, nor were they executed. Instead, they were quietly handed over to an inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, who reportedly took them directly to the black ships and vanished into the warp. No official explanation was ever released. The High Lords issued a statement condemning the act as a deviation. The Black Templars were censured, and Marshal Varick was declared missing in vigil. But other clues paint a darker tale. Data serfs executed for accessing restricted logs. Adeptus Custodes patrols suddenly intensified along specific subterranean access ways. Entire Mechanicus nodes decommissioned within hours of the incident, their data looms smelted under pre-heresy lockdown statutes. The Templars themselves did not speak of it. But afterward, there was a notable shift in their deployments. Certain crusades grew unusually focused, targeting Necron tomb worlds with obsessive zeal. An unspoken change rippled through the chapter, like a forge fire doused in poisoned air. Their silence on the event was absolute, and silence, for a chapter that lives by the sword and dies by the prayer, speaks louder than any confession. To this day, that unscheduled descent is a black mark buried under layers of obfuscation, but one that pulses like a hidden wound beneath Terra's surface. Something called to the Black Templars, and they answered. What they found may never be known in full, but it was enough to frighten the Inquisition, silence an entire chapter, and stain the very act of pilgrimage with dread. Sigismund was not merely a warrior, he was a conduit, an embodiment of purpose so pure, so utterly consumed by righteous fire, that his very shadow seemed to linger long after his death. Among the Black Templars, he is not just the first High Marshal, but the spiritual cornerstone of their eternal crusade. His visions, his wrath, his absolute refusal to bend, echo through the chapter like a second heartbeat. But there are stories, fragmented records, apocryphal scripts, and whispered relic lore that claim Sigismund saw more than just the corruption of mankind, that beneath the heat of his hate, there was fear. Not of heretics, not of Xenos, but of something buried far deeper. According to a forbidden codex fragment once seized by the Ordo Hereticus from a breakaway Ministorum cell, Sigismund experienced a singular vision on the eve of the siege of Terra. As he knelt in prayer upon the basalt floor of the Temple of Oaths, his blade still wet with traitor blood, he was seized by a sight not born of the warp, but something colder, infinitely older. A world of black stone pierced by silver veins. A heartbeat so deep it rumbled through his bones like tectonic thunder, and at its core a figure, vast and crystalline, frozen in agony but not in death. Not a daemon, not a god, but something else, something wrong. He told none of this to Dorn, not to the Emperor, not even to his closest brethren. But some believe that Sigismund recorded the vision in a hidden text, a battle script scrawled not on parchment but burned into the servos of his personal warplate. When the Black Templars retrieved the armor during their earliest crusades, they found that the machine spirits within refused communion, babbling streams of logic-dead language and flaring with radiation when exposed to Terran soil. The relic was sealed, but its presence haunts their most sacred reliquary still, its light dimming and flaring, as though responding to a beat none can hear. The chapter speaks of the burning path, a rite of passage said to be revealed in dreams only to the most devout. It begins with the image of a sun eclipsed not by celestial movement, but by a shape that absorbs light itself. Those who walk this path enter battle with a strange fury, fighting not merely to destroy heresy, but to prevent something from waking. Their zeal is fevered, their voices rise in chant when no priest speaks, and many do not return. Those who do are often changed, marked not by mutation, but by a grim, icy clarity, as though they have seen something they cannot speak of without shattering the minds of others. Some Templars carry scars across their armor, etched in patterns resembling solar flares or fractured stars. These marks appear after crusades where no enemy wielded blade or fire, only silence and stone. One marshal bore a blade said to ring with a sound like shattering crystal every time it struck. He claimed it came from a vault beneath the surface of a dead forge world, where nothing should have lived, but something screamed behind sealed adamantium. When he fell, his blade was locked away and sealed with circuits designed by the Ordo Chronos. There is a legend among certain veteran Templars that Sigismund's spirit did not ascend to the Emperor, but instead roams the depths beneath Terra, bound by oath, by prophecy, by memory. They claim to have seen his ghost, not as a shining vision, but as a black figure of smoke and starlight, standing before gates so old they breathe dust from before the birth of the Imperium. These sightings are not recorded in official logs. They are whispered during long warp jumps, shared in firelit reliquaries, and invoked by warriors who wake screaming, their minds echoing with a voice that isn't their own. The Black Templars do not fear death. But there is something else, an anxiety buried beneath their righteousness, a tension that bleeds into their crusades like unseen ink. Perhaps it comes from that first vision. Perhaps Sigismund, blessed and cursed with absolute clarity, saw a future not of victory but of delay. Not a war to be won, but a prison to be watched. The burning path may not lead to glory, it may lead only to a gate. And beyond that gate lies the thing that even the Emperor chose not to kill, but to bury, forever, in silence and stone. Among the strangest rumors to circulate in the hushed corners of Terran lore are those of Xenos glyphs carved into Terran stone, deep beneath the crust where no hand, human or otherwise, should ever have reached. These symbols, often dismissed as hallucinations or heretical misinterpretations, are described by those few who've seen them and lived as possessing the cold elegance of Necron language. Angular lines of impossible precision, etched with a method unknown even to the Mechanicus. But what truly unsettles is not their presence, but their apparent age, older than the Imperium, older even than the birth of Old Earth's recorded civilization. The Black Templars who descended into these blackened crypts returned with armor scraped by something harder than ceramite and marked by symbols that resisted all attempts at erasure or sanctification. Several of these sigils, when rendered in three-dimensional sequence, created light distortions and auditory feedback loops that mimicked low-frequency pulses observed around known Necron tomb worlds. Magos cryptologists, brought in under the highest secrecy, allegedly confirmed structural similarities to pre-Median Necron data sigils, though no origin could be confirmed. He was found lobotomized within a month, declared spiritually compromised by the Ordo Machinum. The Terran stone, sanctified and layered with millennia of construction, should be devoid of alien presence. Yet the inscriptions were embedded in foundational strata, stone untouched since the days of techno-barbarian rule, perhaps longer. And when these inscriptions were scanned, they mapped not as static texts but as reactive elements, each line and curve interacting with its surroundings as if alive, altering slightly depending on psychic flux and atmospheric pressure. This responsiveness has only ever been observed in Necron pylons or active Cetan shard containment vaults. Worse yet, some of these symbols were not found on walls or columns, but etched into massive crystalline structures buried beneath other materials. Black crystals, cold to the touch, humming with dormant energy, reminiscent of those used by the Necrons to entrap star gods. That such constructs could exist below Terra, not merely on fringe worlds, not in tomb complexes in the halo stars, but beneath humanity's holiest shrine, is a contradiction so vast it strains belief. But the Templars are not prone to fancy, and their refusal to speak of what they found only deepens the dread. There are whisperings that custodian archivists overseeing Terra's subdermal vaults encountered something they could not log, and rather than destroy it, encased it in nullstone and redirected subterranean power flows to obscure its location. Such actions, performed in absolute secrecy and outside the purview of the High Lords, suggest a threat too dire to be acknowledged, even in whispers. The symbols themselves appear in patterns that mirror stellar alignments, though not of any constellation visible from Terra. Astropaths exposed to the glyphs reported hearing songs of stone and flame, and seeing visions of starfields being devoured by crystalline engines. One even scrawled the phrase, "The heart sings for the eater of suns," before immolating herself. The Administratum recorded it as spontaneous combustion due to warp exposure. The Black Templars who recovered the glyphs did not contest the record. They simply left Terra and redirected their crusade toward a Necron world newly discovered in the Ghoul stars. This convergence, Xeno's inscriptions beneath Terra, reactions to psychic stimuli, structural similarities to Titan vaults, has led some rogue scholars of the Ordo Xenos to propose a hypothesis too heretical to publish. That Terra was chosen by the Emperor not merely as the center of human power, but as the site of a prison. Not a symbolic one, but literal. A Titan, perhaps not fully shattered, not fully broken, lies beneath Terra still, bound by ancient Necron mechanisms beyond our understanding. And the glyphs are not warnings, they are locks. Failing, fragmenting locks. The implications are staggering. If true, it would mean the Emperor built the Golden Throne upon a grave not of mankind's making, that the energy pulsing through Terra's core, the very foundation of Imperial might serve a dual purpose, both to sustain the Emperor and to suppress a thing that could annihilate all we know. The Black Templars, in discovering these glyphs, may have done more than disturb ancient stone. They may have loosened the first seal on a god not dead, but dreaming. There are prisons, and then there are tombs. But the structure the Black Templars are rumored to have found beneath Terra defies both categories. This was no simple containment vault, no ritual oubliette or warp-sealed sarcophagus. It was, by all accounts, a machine the size of a mountain, yet not of mechanicum design. It bore none of the rites, none of the symbols, none of the hierarchies of cog and skull. It thrummed with energy, not psychic, not warp-based, but something else. Something older than both. A cold power, a geometric resonance that felt less like electricity and more like gravity distilled into song. The Templars called it the prison that cannot be moved. Its presence beneath Terra is a paradox. No known force in the galaxy could construct such a device within the planet's crust without causing global devastation. Yet there it sat, coiled like a god serpent, its walls made of interlocking polyhedral segments that shifted when observed. Some segments bore markings that responded to touch not with light, but with silence, vacuum-like hollows that absorbed not only sound, but memory. Veterans of the descent reported missing entire moments from their recollection. Hours simply gone, replaced with fragmented visions of starless skies and crystalline figures screaming without mouths. What they saw at the core of this machine is unknown, or perhaps unknowable. One Templar, whose mind survived long enough to record a fragmented log before euthanization, spoke of a thing trapped not by material but by time, a knot in chronology, a scream given form. Another whispered a name not in any human tongue, but which, when rendered phonetically, closely resembles a lost Necron dialect, translated crudely as the unfinished hunger. The machine was not asleep. It pulsed with a rhythm, faint but consistent, like a heartbeat drawn out across centuries. And more than once, it stopped, just for a moment, long enough for the Templars to feel its absence and realize with collective dread that they had come to rely on its pulse without knowing. One moment of silence. One moment when the prison that cannot be moved ever so slightly. Why was it not destroyed? Perhaps because it cannot be. Or perhaps, worse still, because it must not be. To dismantle such a structure might unbind the energies it contains. One theory among the Ordo Chronos suggests the device acts as a temporal anchor, suspending its prisoner in a single moment repeated endlessly. Not stasis as we understand it, but a loop so precise it defies causality. A paradox engine. If broken, the moment ends, and what was once trapped resumes its existence from a point no longer fixed. If this entity is indeed a Citan, it is unlike any known shard. The Citan were splintered by the Necrons millennia ago, shattered into fragments and caged in tesseract labyrinths. But this feels complete, whole, or nearly so, and its prison does not resemble the architectures found on tomb worlds. It is more advanced, more refined, suggesting not imprisonment by the Necrons but by something older, perhaps even by the Citan themselves. A rogue god, locked away by its kin, buried where no stars would shine. The Black Templars, upon their emergence, sealed the descent route with charges set to obliterate not just the entrance, but the surrounding kilometers. Yet the ground reformed, fused not by heat, but by some unknown method. Auspex scans now show solid bedrock where once a tunnel stood, flawless and impenetrable. As if the earth itself rejected intrusion, as if the prison had healed itself. There is no greater blasphemy than the suggestion that the Emperor built his throne upon a lie. But some now believe it was a calculated act, not deception, but containment. That he knew of the prison that cannot be moved, and that Terra was chosen not for its symbolism, but for its proximity to this impossible construct. The throne may not only hold the Emperor in place, it may also be a fail-safe, one final lock atop the impossible, humming with divine energy, restraining a god that feeds on suns and dreams of slaughter. The Black Templars do not speak of the prison. They no longer crusade near Terra. They do not gather in vigil. Some say they fast for days before any audience with the throne. And their silence, cold and absolute, remains the most chilling testament to what they found. Not heresy, not chaos, but something far worse. A truth so absolute it cannot be permitted to live. They were warriors once, crusaders forged in faith and fire, but when the Black Templars emerged from the darkness beneath Terra, they were not unchanged. There is a difference between zeal and obsession, between righteous fury and haunted determination. The few who survived the descent did not speak of what they saw, but their actions afterward spoke volumes. Men who once rejoiced in the fire of righteous war now moved with grim restraint, as if every step might wake something they feared more than death. It began subtly. Chaplains altering their sermons, replacing traditional invocations with cryptic chants filled with geometric references and impossible syllables. Banner iconography shifted, sunbursts replaced with fractured helixes, the Black Cross of Dorn flanked by stylized eclipses. Librarians, few though they are among the Templars, began reporting dreams of falling through blackened crystal voids, chased by a heartbeat not their own. Even non-psychers began to experience what the apothecarian labeled resonant memory phenomena. flashes of scenes and sounds that had never occurred in this lifetime. Shared hallucinations, or perhaps bleeding memories of something beneath. Their war record took a dramatic turn. Entire crusades were redirected toward toonworlds previously ignored by the Imperium. They struck with a vengeance too precise to be random, hitting not just Necron dynasties but specific sites believed to house Catan shard prisons. These operations often came at great cost, with losses far exceeding those the Templars once deemed acceptable. And yet they continued, as if compelled by something beyond command, something deeper than even their famed hatred. A disturbing pattern emerged in the names given to new crusade companies: the Shattered Choir, Vigil of the Starless Deep, the Silencing Hand. Names that do not glorify victory, but rather the act of watching, of containing, of preventing something from returning. One company even adopted a motto, rendered in pre-imperial Low Gothic, translated as "to speak is to loosen the chain." There were more changes. Combat doctrines adapted to favor containment rather than annihilation. Templars began deploying plasma weapons rigged for implosive feedback, intended not to destroy but to collapse structures inward. Their dreadnoughts, when awakened, were given strange sermons, recorded by Mechanicus linguists as pure binary emotion, absent of linguistic form. One dreadnought, designated Hieronymus Crucis, reportedly entered stasis voluntarily mid-campaign, claiming its dreams were becoming shared. When awoken, it remained silent for 9 days, then demanded reassignment to a crusade headed toward a known Khitan fragment site. The Templars themselves grew less numerous, yet no new neophytes were initiated during that period. A pause in recruitment so unusual that even other chapters took notice. Rumors spread that potential recruits were exposed to an unknown rite, and those who did not break were sent not to crusade, but to deep silence. Not dead, not trained, just gone. Veterans who returned from these new crusades bore not the fire of triumph, but the cold silence of penitence. One marshal, Sir Davian Crawl, refused to enter the chapter's primary fortress for 7 years after his return, choosing instead to live alone on the outer shell of a dead moon, surrounded by geomantic sigils and solar mirrors designed to reflect light inward. He died whispering the phrase, "Do not let it see its reflection." The greatest change, however, may be in their silence. The Templars, always stern, always reserved, now move like monks who have seen the abyss blink. Their prayers are not louder, but more urgent. They make no demands of the Emperor, only pleas, not for victory, but for vigilance. They are a blade now tempered not only by hate, but by dread. As if they crusade not only for the Emperor's vision, but against something the Emperor once faced and chose not to destroy. The question remains, what curse did they carry out of that place beneath Terra? It is not warp taint, it is not heresy, it is something colder, heavier, something that bends their chapter ever so slightly away from the rest of the Adeptus Astartes. Perhaps they do not even fully understand it themselves, but whatever it is, it haunts them. They fight harder now. They die more often. But they speak less, much less. And in that silence, one hears an echo, not of war cries nor of bolter fire, but of stone grinding against crystal, and the slow pulse of something vast and eternal that stirs far beneath their feet. When one speaks of Terra, it is easy to imagine it as a bastion of stability, an immovable monolith of order amidst the chaos of the galaxy. But those who watch from within know better. Beneath the illusion of peace, Terra hosts wars that no civilian ever sees. Not in the heavens, not even in the hives, but deep below the bedrock, in corridors not marked on any map, where custodes patrol without heraldry and inquisitors walk without name. There is a war beneath the throne world. A silent war, a secret war, waged not for territory or ideology, but for containment. The Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's golden sentinels, are often seen as aloof warriors of untouchable authority. But those who monitor the lower levels of Terra have noticed their presence increasing in sectors long thought dormant. Patrols now deploy in formation patterns aligned not with defense, but with ritual. They do not patrol against threats, they circle them, encircle them, as if guarding a wound that must never bleed. Their silence is absolute, but their pattern reveals a message. Something is there, and it must not move. Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus and Ordo Xenos are said to have requisitioned entire data vaults from the Imperial archives and then purged them after one use. Information is not just being hidden, it is being devoured. Entire departments reassigned, names struck from memory logs, Vox routes rerouted to avoid static corridors. There are corridors on Terra where Vox signals die without explanation, where Auspex returns impossible results, hollow readings where solid rock should be, thermal scans showing inverted temperatures, echoes of heartbeat patterns far larger than any living being. These are not the acts of a stable regime managing known risks. These are the frantic, methodical actions of those who know something they cannot afford to share. Some have speculated that multiple arms of the Inquisition are engaged in a silent civil conflict, not one of ideology but of philosophy. One faction believes the entity beneath Terra must be preserved in eternal sleep. Another may believe it could be weaponized, or that its awakening is inevitable and must be anticipated, even directed. The Ordo Chronos, thought defunct or mythological by some, has been cited in proximity to custodian actions. Their involvement is a troubling detail. For an order concerned with time anomalies and paradox events to take interest implies that the entity beneath Terra may not merely be a threat in space, but in chronology itself. If this being exists outside of linear time, or is locked in a temporal loop as some theorize, then its release could rewrite not just the present, but the past. Furthermore, some among the Silent Sisterhood have been observed forming temporary conclaves with no vocal interaction, sharing data only through coded light and genetic transmission. These sisters, immune to psychic resonance, are said to have walked the deepest chambers beneath the Golden Throne, and returned with skin pale as ash and eyes that refuse to close. Whatever they found, they are the only ones capable of standing near it without immediate psychic collapse. Mechanicus enclaves buried deep in the Martian sanctums on Terra have begun routing power to unknown conduits. These energy flows are not recorded in any public schema. Tech priests assigned to monitor these flows are rotated every 3 weeks, an unheard of frequency, and their memory cortex is wiped with each transfer. One engineer left a final message before self-immolation. The machine does not forget, it dreams. Amidst all this, there are reports of battles. Brief, silent flashes of conflict that light up the deep Auspex nets. Bolt rounds, fusion residue, molecular disintegration traces. No bodies, no records. The war beneath Terra is not to win. It is to maintain, it is to suppress, it is to prevent. The strangest of all are the Black Hour events. These are moments lasting less than 30 seconds, during which time appears to skip. Civilians on the surface notice nothing, but the Deep Watchers know. Clocks desynchronize, recorded movement is lost, and the gravitational tide subtly shifts. These moments occur in precise lunar cycles and always correspond with increased activity from the custodies. Whatever they are responding to, it is happening regularly, and with increasing intensity. What lies beneath Terra is not just guarded, it is warred over, not for gain, but for balance. A scale tipped too far in either direction, revelation or repression, could end the Imperium as surely as Abaddon ever could. This is not a war of banners and cries. It is a war of silence, of sealed doors, of whispered names that are never written down. A war to keep the prison from becoming a beacon. A war to stop the waking of a god. Not all who dwell beneath Terra serve the Imperium as it exists today. Some belong to the past, a past buried in dust, ash, and shame. Before the rise of the Emperor, before the Unification Wars, there were many orders of techno-mystics, machine ascendants, and logic cults who practiced rites that would now be deemed heresy. Some of them vanished. Some were absorbed into the Mechanicum. But a few, just a few, went underground in the most literal sense, burrowing beneath Terra to continue their impossible work. These are the forgotten machine cults of the deep. To speak of them openly is dangerous. They are not acknowledged in Mechanicus scripture. They appear in no data cohort indexes or Forge World records. But their symbols sometimes appear, etched into the inner plating of ancient relics recovered from unknown vaults. Recursive spirals woven with binary that does not conform to the standard Omniscient language. Tech priests who have attempted to decode these sequences have suffered logic crashes so profound their cogitator lobes had to be cauterized to prevent feedback. According to fragmentary testimony intercepted from an intercepted heretic cell during the 13th Black Crusade, there is a cult known as the Circuit Null, a secretive sect whose sole purpose is the maintenance of the prison that cannot be moved. They do not innovate. They do not experiment. They only repair. They descend through tunnels no one else can find, their bodies replaced with crystal logic matrices, their minds housed in oblong data coffins. They sing only in frequencies that shatter servitors and make Vox units scream. What drives them? Perhaps obligation, perhaps guilt, perhaps survival. Some speculate they were the original wardens, created during the dark age of technology by humanity's forgotten precursors. Engineers who discovered the trapped Skitan and realized that, while they could not destroy it, they could slow its unmaking of reality. Others claim they are the remnants of an ancient Xenos race enslaved by the Necron Tyre, left behind when the dynasties abandoned the site, cursed to maintain the vault they once built. The Circuit Null is not alone. There are tales of the Ascent Slaved, a cabal of pre-imperial data philosophers who claim the only way to survive the next awakening is to merge with the prison itself. They have long since given up their human forms, existing as twisted amalgamations of machine and crystal, fused into the prison walls, eternally whispering countersongs to the pulse within. Their voices counteract the dream music of the Khitan, creating discordant harmonics that keep the entity from fully asserting its will. If they fall silent, the prison weakens. There are even wilder tales of machine saints who wander the catacombs with eyes of emerald fire, speaking in riddles and quantum paradox. Of children born to the deep underhives who grow with circuitry already embedded in their flesh, drawn unerringly toward the black gates below. Of a child once dragged upwards screaming, the hunger sees the sky, and then imploding into light. Why have these cults not been purged? Perhaps because they are unknown, or perhaps, more chillingly, because someone ensures their survival. The High Lords of Terra may not even be aware. But the Custodes, the Inquisition, they may turn a blind eye, not out of mercy, but necessity. For all their deviation, these cults serve a singular, irreplaceable purpose: the maintenance of the impossible, the constant reinforcement of an ancient, failing seal. Without them, the machine would degrade. And once degraded, it would awaken. Some believe the machine cults are beginning to fail, that their numbers dwindle, that they no longer remember why they repair what they do. Their songs grow off-tempo. Their tools, once custom-forged for alien mechanisms, are now makeshift, scavenged. And if the machine breaks, if the rituals lapse, then what was once still may begin to stir. The Black Templars in their descent may have glimpsed one of these cults, may have borne witness to their failing rites, their cracked voices echoing against crystal walls, trying to remember hymns older than language. Perhaps they saw not enemies but martyrs, ancient laborers locked in a task that no longer serves an empire, but a species. Perhaps they understood in that moment that this was not heresy. This was sacrifice, a bargain made not with chaos, but with reality itself. And perhaps they realized, with a horror more profound than any battlefield revelation, that the cults are dying. And when they do, when the songs fall silent, there will be no one left to repair the gate. No one left to keep the crystal god asleep. Some whispers say the Black Templars were cursed the moment they set foot beneath Terra. Others argue that the curse began much earlier, that it was encoded in their lineage, embedded in their gene seed by the echo of Sigismund's final vision. Whatever the truth, the aftermath of their forbidden descent was not merely political scandal or hidden censure. It was something deeper, something spiritual, a fracture that ran not just through their chapter, but through the very identity of what it meant to be a Templar. They returned altered, not physically, not in flesh or gene seed, but in presence. A darkness followed them, not warp-born, not chaos-tainted, but something colder. Their chaplains began performing rites in absolute silence. Their banners became darker, the red of the eternal crusade dimming to a shadowy crimson. The purity seals they once bore with pride were replaced with binding cords that had no text, only empty parchment and wax blackened by smoke. Symbolism shifted, and with it, so did their interpretation of faith. Templars have always rejected psychers. But in the years following the descent, their hatred seemed to evolve, not just into rejection, but dread. Entire neophyte training cohorts were wiped clean after brief psychic evaluations, not due to mutation, but due to resonance. Librarians of allied chapters reported that merely being near a Templar from the silenced crusade caused their powers to fail, flicker, or worse, turn inward. One gray night, after prolonged exposure, claimed the Templars' aura echoed with unmade voices. The curse did not manifest as madness, but as a kind of erasure. Templars began to forget their own prayers. Crusade records began returning incomplete. Data logs stored in secure cogitators were found with sections overwritten by repeating phrases: "It stirs, it watches, it remembers." No evidence of tampering, no signs of warp intrusion, just words, repeating, changing slightly each time, growing more structured. Some believe the curse is not active, but passive. That by stepping into the presence of the sleeping god beneath Terra, the Templars were marked. Not possessed, not controlled, but noted, identified, recorded. As if a crystalline intelligence incapable of emotion nonetheless recognizes intrusion and begins to adjust its dream accordingly. A dream in which the Templars are now included. This would explain the subtle shifts in behavior. Veterans from other chapters describe Templars staring too long into the void of space, murmuring to themselves in binary frequencies picked up only by auspex. Others have noted an increasing obsession with the concept of unmaking, the idea that some enemies should not be killed but erased, conceptually and spiritually. A disturbing deviation from the Templars' usual doctrine of righteous annihilation. One of the most haunting stories comes from a sister of the Order's Dialogus, who transcribed a silent vigil held by 3 Templar chaplains. For 9 hours, they knelt before a sealed relic capsule. No prayers were spoken, no movements made, only the sound of breath and the low hum of an object that should not have been able to resonate without power. When the capsule was opened, it contained only a single object, a mirror, cracked, scorched, and fused with a black crystal vein. Some say the curse is communicable, that those who spend too long around these altered Templars begin to dream of strange geometries, of cities that hum without power, of suns devoured not by warp storms, but by hunger made form. A few within the Inquisition believe the chapter should be quarantined. Others argue they are more valuable now than ever, guided by an insight that defies logic, able to find and destroy ancient threats before they rise. But if the Templars are cursed, it is a curse they have accepted. They wear it like armor. They do not flinch from it. They do not protest. They march into battle as they always have, but now with a silence that cuts deeper than any chainsword. A silence filled not with uncertainty, but with purpose. And perhaps that is the most terrifying part. That whatever touched them beneath Terra did not drive them mad. It gave them clarity. A clarity no loyal servant of the Emperor should possess. A clarity that does not ask why they fight, but what they are fighting to prevent, and what they are willing to become to ensure it never wakes. A secret buried beneath Terra is dangerous not merely because of what it is, but because of what it implies. For if the entity below the throne world truly is a Citan, complete, enraged, and dreaming in crystalline silence, then the consequences of its awakening are beyond apocalyptic. We speak often of demon incursions, of hive fleet gluttony, of Necron reawakening. But this would be something worse. A living bomb beneath the Imperium's very heart. A Tan is not a god in the way the Warpborn are gods. It is not fed by belief, it is not twisted by emotion. It is pure, undiluted reality. A being of star matter, a predator of solar systems, a glutton of nuclear hearts. Even the mere shard of a Citan can consume cities, warp gravity, and unmake physics with its will. But what if one had not been shattered? What if one had evaded the betrayal of the Necrons? What if one, in its wholeness, had burrowed into the heart of the cradle of mankind? Perhaps not to destroy it, but to wait. To heal? Some theorists among the forbidden halls of the Ordo Chronos speak of the Terran singularity. A theoretical collapse not of gravity, but of fate, a point where too many threads of history converge in one place at one time. The birthplace of the Emperor. The seat of the Golden Throne, the resting place of a god not of mankind's making. Perhaps it is no coincidence. Perhaps the Emperor chose Terra because he knew. Or perhaps he was drawn to it. Perhaps his rise was accelerated, shaped, even warped by proximity to the dreaming crystal in the deep. The throne itself is a curiosity, a machine that predates even the Emperor, repurposed to channel psychic power. But what if it is not merely a tool? What if it is a shackle? Every moment he remains bound to it, the prison below remains quiet. Every time the Astronomicon pulses, perhaps it overlays a counter-frequency, an anti-harmony, that suppresses the Tan's song. The Emperor may not simply be a dying god. He may be a keystone in a lock. If he ever dies, truly dies, the result may not be the collapse of the Astronomicon or the fragmentation of imperial power. It may be the awakening of something whose hunger is not metaphorical, but elemental. A being that remembers when the stars were young and believes it is still owed their light. And as it wakes, it will not rage. It will not scream. It will rise in perfect silence, like a sun inverted, and begin again the feast interrupted so long ago. Some fragments of prophecy found in ancient Black Library tomes hint at a core heart that sings beneath the King of Men, a being that waits to replace the light with the cold geometry of the void. Other, more obscure Xenos texts, carved into the bones of extinct species, speak of a god who slept in the stone of the first world and will wear the skin of the world's last king. These might be metaphor, but then again, so might the entire Imperium. If the Tan beneath Terra awakens, it will not do so loudly. It will begin with the stars dimming, with warp travel unraveling, with gravity forgetting how to behave, with suns blinking out as they are fed to a logic that views life not as sacred, but as inefficient heat. The death toll will not be measured in bodies, but in extinguished possibilities, in timelines that never occur, in futures devoured before they can be dreamed. There is no weapon known to mankind that can stop such a being. Even the Necrons only manage to shatter their gods through betrayal and impossible devices that no longer exist. If one survived whole, and worse, if it has spent the last millennia recovering, absorbing ambient power, feeding off the rituals, deaths, and psychic emanations of a billion pilgrims, then it is already too late. Perhaps the Emperor holds it still. Perhaps the ritual of the throne, the ceaseless sacrifice of psychers, the tide of faith that floods Terra, perhaps it all serves not to empower him but to distract it, to lull the crystalline god deeper into its recursive dream. But dreams, however deep, must end, and when it opens its eyes, it may not see Terra. It may see only fuel, only fire, only hunger. The Black Templars know this. Perhaps that is why they changed. Not because they fear it, but because they saw the cost of failing to stop it. Because they now understand that the end will not come from the Eye of Terror, nor from the Tyranids, nor from any daemon prince or alien warlord. It will come from beneath our feet, from the bedrock of belief, from the core of the cradle. And when it comes, there will be no scream, only silence, and then nothing. At the heart of every empire lies a secret it cannot afford to share. For the Imperium, that secret may lie beneath the golden throne, sealed in silence, buried in myth, warded by blood and prayer and circuitry older than history. And for all the grandeur of Terra, for all the faith and power that radiates from its spires, the truth may be that it rests atop the final seal, a gate forged not in hope, but in terror. A prison crafted not to reform, but to forget. It is said among the Black Templars that there is a final vow, taken only by those who have seen what should never be seen. A vow not to crusade, not to cleanse, but to guard. This vow is not spoken, it is etched in the soul. The warriors who make it do not wear rank, they do not take command, they vanish. Some say they become relic keepers. Others believe they are sent to stations hidden even from the Inquisition. Fortresses built into asteroids, drifting silently above ancient tombs, watching, waiting. These guardians are the last watchers of the last gate. The seal beneath Terra, if such a thing exists, is no longer merely a lock. It is a bargain, a pact between the dying light of mankind and the sleeping cold of something that remembers when galaxies were young. The Emperor sits atop it not as a sovereign, but as a sacrifice. His continued suffering may not only sustain the Imperium, it may delay the end of all things. That is the final tragedy. That the greatest of all mankind's victories, the throne, the ascension, the worship, may not be about power at all. It may be about containment, about delay, about giving us one more year, one more day, one more moment before the hunger below stirs and sees the stars once more. The Black Templars, for all their fury and faith, may have seen this truth. And in that moment, they changed. They became more than crusaders. They became jailers of an idea, wielders of a silence forged in terror. They fight not only to protect the Imperium, but to shield it from a truth that would collapse its heart. A truth that says the Emperor did not build a throne, he built a lid. And beneath that lid is a god that must never awaken. So they do not speak, They do not write, they march, they bleed, they die. And in their final breath, they carry with them the weight of that knowledge, the cold understanding that their sacrifice is not to win a war, but to stop one from ever beginning. A war that, if unleashed, would make the Horus Heresy seem like a skirmish, would render the Great Rift a flicker. They have become shadows, not because they have fallen, but because they now walk alongside a truth so vast, so unbearable, that to share it would break the soul of mankind. Perhaps someday the Emperor will rise. Perhaps someday the seals will break, perhaps the stars will darken and the silence will end. But until that day, the final seal holds, not because of its strength, but because of the warriors who have sworn to keep it closed. So remember them, not as zealots, not as fanatics, but as the last line of faith between the world we know and the hunger beneath. The Black Templars are no longer just a chapter. They are a covenant, a warning, a final whisper in the dark. And if you feel the ground tremble beneath your feet, do not pray, run. There are those within the Inquisition who speak, never aloud, of a contingency protocol known only as Pallid Vector. A myth whispered by the Ordo Chronos and feared by even the most radical elements of the Ordo Malleus. It is said to be a last resort, a doctrine of annihilation not for enemies, but for Terra itself. And it exists, if it exists at all, not as a document, not as a command, but as an encoded instinct passed from inquisitor to inquisitor in the most dire circumstances, when the seal beneath Terra shows signs of strain, when the final equation tips toward waking. The essence of Pallid Vector is terrible in its simplicity. If containment fails, if the prison weakens beyond recovery, the Imperium must destroy its own heart, not to win, not to survive, but to deny. For if the god beneath the throne stirs fully, then the death of Terra is preferable to its freedom. Consider the implications of this truth. The Imperium, in all its monolithic arrogance, built on sacrifice and martyrdom, may have always known that its end would come not from rebellion or decay, but from within. From the moment the Emperor seated himself on the throne, a timer began to tick. A countdown hidden in silence, buried beneath layer after layer of doctrine and lies. And those who truly serve the Inquisition, who know the hidden shape of fate, carry within them the knowledge that one day they may be called not to save Terra, but to end it. What would that look like? Not a bombardment from space, not exterminate us by virus bomb or cyclonic torpedo. Such methods are too slow, too chaotic. No, Pallid Vector would be activated by the detonation of chronometric failsafes, devices created in the dark age of technology and hidden in 4 of the deepest strata of Terra's mantle. These are not nuclear bombs. They are anti-time charges, implosions of causality that erase not only matter, but memory. Events. They collapse potential into void, remove entire moments from the fabric of reality. The custodies know, not all of them, but enough. It is said there are 9 among their number who wear no heraldry, speak no vows, and guard no corridors. They are called the Null Sentinels. Their vigil is not of protection, but of readiness. Should the threshold of the God's awakening be breached, they are to descend, together, into the core, where the primary fail-safe sleeps. It requires 9 keys, 9 hearts, 9 deaths. Only the Emperor may overrule its activation, and he does not speak. More disturbingly, rumors speak of a secondary option, one that does not involve destruction but offering. The throne may not simply suppress the entity below, but communicate with it. Some of the most blasphemous texts discovered by rogue heretics suggest the throne emits a constant litany of psychic resonance designed to simulate reverence, not to the Emperor, but to the god beneath. A lullaby, a worship, a counterfeit of faith meant to satisfy the hunger within long enough to forestall its awakening. And what if that hunger grows tired of shadows? A third possibility is more insidious still, that the Emperor did not trap the god beneath, but merged with it, that the throne is not a prison, but a fusion point, that the Emperor's divinity is not entirely his own, but borrowed, bought with a bargain struck in the dead language of stars, long before mankind knew fire. If so, then when the Emperor dies, the entity beneath does not awaken. It becomes him, or he becomes it. The new god of man, not born of warp or faith, but of hunger and inevitability. This theory is denied, of course, but the Black Templars who return from the deep walk as if they believe it. They do not seek the Emperor's return as others do, They do not chant for resurrection. They guard the throne with fervor, yes, but not to protect it, to isolate it, as if they fear that if he were to rise, it would not be him. It would be something else wearing his face. Something that remembers the taste of suns and dreams of a galaxy shrouded not in chaos, but in cold. Even the Mechanicus, silent allies in this vigilance, have changed. Certain archmagi now refuse to speak the machine god's name. Some forges have restructured their Noosphere prayers to remove all reference to light, replacing it with pattern, geometry, logic. A subtle shift, but one that suggests preparation. For if the entity beneath Terra awakes, it will not demand devotion. It will demand symmetry, and those who are not aligned will be unmade. The Eldar may know more. Their Farseers have always avoided Terra in their visions, citing a blankness too dangerous to peer into. But one recovered soulstone, smuggled from a shattered craft world by a Deathseer, contained a phrase etched into its last echoes. The lightless star walks. Terra is not a throne, it is a cradle, and its child is stirring. In the void of all this dread, there remains one thread of grim hope. That awareness is resistance. That by knowing, by fearing, by preparing, we slow the gods' ascent. That our stories, our legends, our very paranoia becomes part of the containment. A net of belief not in salvation, but in vigilance. The Black Templars are not mad. They are mirrors, reflecting the nightmare we dare not name. They know that silence is not peace, it is delay. So tell the story. Whisper the fear. Watch the stars. Count the heartbeats beneath your feet. And know this, if you ever hear a sound beneath Terra, a pulse that does not match your own, it is already too late. There is a phenomenon that plagues the soul of Terra. Whispers in the void. Tremors in the mind, patterns of deviation so precise they cannot be dismissed as coincidence. Scholars of the Ordo Psychana refer to it as the waking harmonic, a psychic resonance pattern detected not only within sanctioned psychers but, disturbingly, in individuals with no known warp sensitivity. It began subtly, first recorded during M36, noted only in marginalia and redacted dream logs. By M39, it had a shape, a waveform, unique and repeating, always strongest beneath the cradle continent, always in synchrony with the pulse of the Golden Throne. What is chilling is not the presence of this waveform, but its persistence and its growth. It began in dreams. Random flashes of crystalline geometries, impossible fractals, suns screaming in slow motion. Then came the echo, a repeating pulse felt in the minds of thousands, timed not with any known Terran clock, but with a deeper cadence. Something beneath time. The black ships arriving to collect psychers began reporting increased psychotic collapse, not from exposure to the warp, but from psychic bleed-through that did not match any known demonic signature. And it did not end there. Tech priests stationed near the Martian Trench experienced phantom calculations, mathematical truths that could not be resolved, equations that completed themselves in languages the Mechanicus had never written. Entire cogitators bricked themselves trying to process these intrusive variables. Worse still, newborn children across Terra, born even in the highest spire clinics of the ecclesiarchy, have been found humming. Not lullabies, not mimicry, harmonics. Measured, resonant, synchronized to the throne's cycle. Some weep and bleed from the nose when separated from the earth. Some simply stop breathing unless placed against the stone. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica attempted to isolate the phenomenon. They failed. The waking harmonic is not warp-born. It bypasses Gellar fields, ignores null shields. It is not a voice. It is a rhythm, a thrum buried in the foundation of Terra, vibrating not through rock but through cognition itself. When psychers try to translate it, they lose speech. When astropaths attempt to sketch it, their hands rot. One seer carved it into her own face, gouging it in with her nails, whispering, "It is learning. It is tuning itself. It will speak soon." In response, the Inquisition has initiated multiple suppression projects. Entire districts in the lower hives of Terra have been cleansed due to psychic instability. Families relocated, vox signals scrambled. Yet the rhythm continues, unaffected. It seems to migrate, avoiding eradication, adjusting its waveform in a way that suggests not randomness, but awareness. Some among the Ordo Xenos have begun drawing connections to Necron signal matrices. There is a disturbing alignment between the waking harmonic and the ancient pulse beacons that the Necrons use to coordinate Toon World activity. What if the god beneath Terra is not merely dormant, but broadcasting? What if its slumber is not silent, but active? A coded resonance slowly aligning the very biosphere of Terra to a new logic, a new song? The Black Templars have taken particular interest. Recent data shows that some of their chaplains have begun incorporating silent harmonic patterns into their litanies, not words but vibrations. Battle sermons rendered in structured silence aimed not at inspiring but countering, damping, holding the rhythm back. As if the chapter believes that sound itself may be the battlefield. An obscure mechanicus cult, known only as the Order of Null Array, believes the waking harmonic is not just a side effect, it is a test. That the god beneath the throne is reaching upward, not to escape, but to find a mind tuned to its signal, a conduit, a host, a body, and it is not searching at random, it is listening, sifting, selecting. A rogue psyker recently captured near the North Magna Hive spoke a single phrase before he died: "It knows my name." When his body was autopsied, his bones had begun to calcify into crystal, not warpstone, not daemon corrupted. Something else. Something that resonated under Auspec's scan, vibrating in rhythm with the Golden Throne's output. Perhaps that is the deepest terror, that the throne is not a suppression engine, but a translation matrix. That the Emperor's agony is the cost of converting this god's thoughts into something Terran minds can survive. That the entire Imperium, in its prayers, its architecture, its hierarchy, is being reshaped by a language not born of man, but of stars long dead and gods never meant to wake. And if this resonance continues to spread, if entire populations begin to hum in unison, if children begin to speak truths they should not know, then the seal may already be failing, not in fire, not in sound, but in sync. So if you hear it, if you feel the ground vibrate in time with your heart, do not call for aid, do not pray. Place your ear to the stone and listen. And know in that moment that it is listening too. There is an order within the ecclesiarchy that no one is permitted to name. Its members wear no symbols, bear no titles, and hold no official rank. They are neither confessors nor cardinals, neither missionaries nor preachers. Yet they move among the adepta sororitas with silent authority. They sit in conclaves where even the most powerful hierarchs are barred. Among those who risk speaking of them at all, they are called the quietist clergy, the Church of the Silent Flame. Their origins are unknown. Some believe they were born in the final hours of the Horus Heresy, when the scorched halls of the imperial palace still reeked of ash and regret. Others whisper that they are far older, a relic of the Unification Wars, perhaps even predating the rise of the ecclesiarchal caste entirely. Wherever they came from, their purpose is clear: containment, not of heresy, not of xenos, but of knowledge. The quietist clergy believe that the greatest threat to mankind is not disbelief, but understanding. That there are truths which, once spoken, cannot be unsaid. And chief among these truths is the waking prison. While the rest of the ecclesiarchy praises the emperor as a god of light and war, the Silent Flame preaches that his greatest act was not conquest, but concealment. That the entire Imperium is not a temple, but a smokescreen. A great cathedral built to distract from the silence beneath. They do not convert, they do not evangelize, they cleanse. Temples where whispers have begun to rise from the stone are burned to the ground. Preachers who begin to deviate from approved litanies vanish without trace. Even saints are not safe. Statues crumble mysteriously, relics disappear, miraculous texts are quietly redacted. It is said they carry relics of their own. Fragments of obsidian etched with inverted sigils, scripture written in mirrored high Gothic, communion wafers that leave a film of ash on the tongue. But they are not unopposed. Within the ecclesiarchy, there has emerged a splintering sect known as the Flame of Totality. Radical theologians who argue that the truth of the waking prison must be revealed, that mankind's only hope lies not in ignorance but in mass awakening. They point to the emperor's own silence as proof. He does not speak because we are not yet ready, they cry, but we must become ready. They believe the god beneath Terra is not the enemy, but the next step, that the emperor's fusion with the throne is the chrysalis phase of a larger ascension, that he is not dying but transforming, and when the time is right, he will rise not alone, but as two made one, the emperor and the god below, flesh and crystal, warp and void. And in that union, mankind will be remade. The silent flame finds this idea abhorrent. Blasphemy of the deepest order. They have declared an internal crusade, not recognized by the Senatorum Imperialis, not sanctioned by the Ordo Hereticus, but waged in secret, in whispers and assassinations and burnings that leave no ashes. They seek to exterminate the flame of totality before their gospel spreads. For if their vision takes hold, if the faithful begin to want the God beneath to wake, the prison fails not from weakness but from invitation. Recent data reveals that multiple basilicas across Terra have been sealed for renovation despite no structural faults. Pilgrims report strange occurrences: altars vibrating during Mass, icons weeping black resin, voices heard during silent prayer. Some believe these are manifestations of divine presence. The silent flame believes otherwise, that these are responses, that the God beneath Terra is learning faith, mimicking it, that it hears the praise sung above and begins to wonder, am I not divine too? And it is not only words. Architecture itself has begun to change. Cathedral blueprints mysteriously alter during construction. Spires bend at impossible angles. Windows align to constellations that no longer exist. Some Adeptus Sororitas have begun inscribing new chants, not out of heresy but inspiration, psalms with meter and rhythm but no meaning. When questioned, they simply say, "We heard it in the stone." Caught between revelation and erasure, the ecclesiarchy stands at a precipice. And in that tension, the Black Templars become something terrifying. Not merely warriors of faith, but arbiters of theological annihilation. They have sided, it seems, with the silent flame. Where a priest chants too deeply, he is silenced. Where a reliquary hums, it is shattered. Where the God beneath begins to be worshipped, they do not argue. They purge. Yet even they cannot hold back belief forever. Mankind is a creature of narrative, and the idea that beneath Terra sleeps not a threat, but a promise, that resonates. It spreads, it seeds itself in the hopeful, the desperate, the broken. And where it takes root, the rhythm grows louder. If the ecclesiarchy fractures, if enough voices rise to greet the prison as a second savior, then the seal may be broken not with force, but with worship. And when that day comes, the God beneath will not need to escape. It will be summoned. And if you've come this far, fellow crusader of forbidden truths, then you know what must be done. Subscribe to this channel and join the eternal vigil. There are more secrets yet to uncover, and together we will guard the gate.